for a lot of these people, they don't actually think about the real world implications or the politics of it all. Because my criticism of Kamala Harris in her lackluster approach, in her failure of an approach to dealing with this major issue, Gaza, the genocide that was taking place in Gaza that a lot of people were angry about, turned into an abject failure for the campaign, right? So I was right on that front. What's also very frustrating about this stuff is that, like, I constantly want the Democrats to actually be a fighter party, right? A party that fights back against the Republicans, where they don't do that and then they lose. They lean into right-wing forces and they lose. It's very frustrating to see people constantly bastardize that message and try to do shitty analysis in general, because this is the shitty analysis that makes Dems lose, right? Like that's what's frustrating. Like, you can't just, like, just as I tell leftists, you know, Marxist, Leninist, vanguardists, like, you have to meet people where they're at. You have to organize around the existing material conditions rather than close your eyes and imagine a world where everyone has this revolutionary potential, or everyone actually has class consciousness and a socialist revolution is imminent. Like, you have to realize you have to go where the masses are. The same goes for liberals as well, who ironically enough are actually firmly committed to at least, like, mass politics, because liberalism is mass politics. That's where a lot of people are. That's how they self-identify. And yet what's frustrating to me is that, like, they are unable to see the reality. They're unable to see the reality. They're unable to look at what the base is saying. They have this incredibly smug attitude over the stupidity of the base of voters, where they're like, no, they don't understand. If they knew any better, they would just vote on harm reduction. It's like, okay, well, you can't assume that every voter is going to make the harm reduction. Every voter is going to go along with a harm reduction argument. It's very clear that, like, lying is a very effective tool, for example. Like, you have to think about these things if you truly understand the dangers of Donald Trump, as I did. Yeah, that clip is also famously cropped, not to show, like, what I'm talking about. Like, there's a reason why it's zoomed in, right? You got duped. Hasan was talking about bipartisan American support for defending Israel and attacking Iran. Maybe you should ask yourself why this context, a clearly visible tweet about Israel and Iran that Hasan was talking about, is cropped out. Anti-war championing that was coming from dumbass Republicans. I told you that it was all bullshit over and over again. And make no mistake when I say this. Make no mistake when I say this. Democrats would do this exact same thing. Democrats maybe won't do the same, like, you know, song and dance in the way that Donald Trump does. They wouldn't go about it the same way, but they would do the exact same thing. Democrats, if they were in charge right now, would be doing 100% the exact same thing. Yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting about it, right? Because, like, you see this and you go, ooh, this is fantastic. I will clip this. I will shorten it. I will actually make sure that the tweet is not visible either, so that people don't even accidentally arrive at the context. And if you're doing that and you find yourself, like, in a position where you're against the Republican Party, okay, if you're anti-Republican, but you spend all of your efforts and all of your energy trying to do oppo stuff like this against, like, a left voice in the country, you're failing to see the forest for the trees. Your focus is unimaginably narrow. Okay? That's what the issue is. Not only is your focus unimaginably narrow, like, you're trying to win, like, minor battles on the internet, and the most you do is piss off a bunch of liberals and I guess negatively polarize a bunch of people in your audience to turn around and think that I'm, like, a hostile figure to the Democratic Party or whatever the right-wing Republican position is in this country. And it's very stupid. It's very stupid to do that, because, like, you get nothing out of this. Like, it's not like I'm going away, right? And it's not like the Democrats in charge think of me in that same way anyway. They see me as a person that, like, got a bunch of stuff right. They see me as a person that got a bunch of stuff right about the election. And the reason why they think that is because I went to them and I talked to them. I talked to them in the lead up to the campaign. I talked to them before the election cycle. I talked to them after the election cycle. I continuously am trying to move this country in a more positive direction, in a left flank direction for the Democrats, both on the electability front, but also because I think that is good politics and good policy. You getting hate is all they want. For them, this is sufficient. Yeah, well, my point is they're gonna clip this and be like, what? And ignore any person that replies to them with proof. I can literally see how they operate in real time. I know, but I guess like if these guys, my point is if these guys spent this energy on like Nazis, on Republicans in general, if they spent a fraction of the energy they spent on someone like myself on the actual opposition, it would probably be a little bit more productive because they don't like how Nazi infested the website is, right? Nobody likes it. Like we all align on that. We all align on that issue where like we don't like the right. So it just blows my mind that there are still so many people that spend every waking moment looking at this unlimited faucet of misinformation coming from the right, this unlimited, this incredibly toxic space that they have been able to dominate, especially on Twitter. And then there's obviously the impact that Twitter has on places like Reddit and places like TikTok and places like, Twitch even and YouTube and everywhere else. And it blows my mind that these guys would be like, we hate that shit too, but honestly, we hate you more. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I literally don't understand it. And that's part of the reason why I barely ever talk about these guys. Okay? Because not because like, oh, when I talk about them, I highlight them and I platform them. And then, my haters will then coalesce around them and it gives them a platform. And that's precisely why they're usually doing these kinds of lines of attack. But the major reason as to why I don't do this is because I think it's unproductive in general. Like, I think it's far more important to fight the conservative forces in this country, to fight the reactionary forces in this country, both within the Republican Party and outside of the Republican Party. Okay? That's it. That is the major reason as to why I don't do it. And that's the reason why I don't even like hit the ACP. You know what I mean? Like, for me, if someone is anti-capitalist, I do not see them as a major threat. I don't even see them as like a major mover and shaker in this country's politics. So there is no reason to battle with them at all. As long as people are fighting the Republicans, or as long as people are doing their very best to improve the material conditions of the working class, as long as people are trying to save the lives of Palestinians and things like that, there are redeemable qualities in every single person, and I will try to find them no matter what. But it is kind of crazy that there are people who are just so invested in this narrative. And I don't know. I don't understand how you can spend every waking moment like this, especially at a time like this. But anyway, this guy said, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but for all intents and purposes, Hasan was basically right. From a geopolitical military wonk perspective, the Trump administration has been nothing short of disastrous everywhere except MENA. But realistically, domestically, Kamala's White House would have been virtually indistinguishable from a Trump White House. Well, that's not quite true. Technically, there would have been higher rates of deportation, drawing significantly less attention. The part that I'm going to get in trouble for pointing out, I can't really put this politely. Kamala is just another reptile politician who's generally detached from the live realities of people everywhere. In Afghanistan, there was a proposal that would have gotten girls back into schools on a modified but workable curriculum. The Taliban's leadership was actually on board with it. Yes, I know it might surprise everyone, but the White House's assistance was required to get that proposal into the end zone. For the plan to succeed, the U.S. needed to shut its lips and not say anything to make it look like this was a proposal the Taliban had come up with and just quietly help with the procurement of educational materials. The effort was passed over to the White House, and since it's a relatively low priority thing, that fell into the bailiwick of the office of the vice president at the time. That was one Kamala Harris. So the plan snaked its way into the office of the VP, where it immediately died an ignoble death solely because Kamala staffers concluded she'll never go for it because she wouldn't be able to take credit. Okay? It's crazy that this guy thinks that's a hot take, by the way, and it's not true. And the irony is, like, I wasn't even talking about like all of the things that a Kamala Harris presidency would represent in terms of being identical to Donald Trump. There's never been a moment where I've said that Kamala Harris would be identical to Donald Trump on every issue. And that's what's so frustrating about it, because it's not that I don't hate when people hate me, but if you're going to hate me and you're going to disagree with me, you have to disagree with the actual positions that I hold. And what's so frustrating is people never do that. They just instantly go, I don't give a f what your position is. I'm just going to lie about what your positions are. And that's what's so frustrating to me, someone who, you know, spends every waking moment openly communicating my desires, openly talking about like what my opinions are. And it's unimaginably frustrating to have to deal with that shit, because there are so many people out there who are like-minded people, right? So many people out there who are like-minded people, who are good people, who are honest people, who are working class people, who just, you know, just tune into this kind of shit every now and then and only see a clip like this that is completely ridiculous and antithetical to my worldview. And they make up their minds and they go, this guy's a villain. This guy's deeply unserious. This guy's a piece of shit. And I don't like that. Right? I hate that. I think it's very, very frustrating because like why the fuck are you doing that to me? Isn't there bigger fish to fry? But in any case, as far as like the Trump stuff, I think you were outside of New York City long enough to see that these people don't exist outside of Reddit and Twitter. Yes, but we do live in the online world, right? We do live in an increasingly more online world. Thank you, Ugopnik, for the raid. Hope you had a good stream, brother. We do live in an increasingly online world, and like this does have the capacity to impact people's opinions, and it shuts off like new valves that I could tap into in terms of new audiences very effectively, because they just think that I'm like right wing. You know, if they're like liberals, they think I'm like a pro-Trump. You know, and it causes them to not actually dip their toes into my commentary and potentially see that we are all like-minded. That we are all fighting the same battle. And it's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that like, oh, if you hate me, then you know, you will never accomplish anything. Like if, for example, I'll give you this, the greatest example I will give you is this with Zoran Mamdani, right? A lot of people initially hated Zoran Mamdani, but then he won the Democratic primary. He became the Democrat. He had this awesome campaign, and those very same people who hated him slowly but surely turned into Zoran Mamdani, and they liked him, right? Now there's this weird situation where like a lot of the liberals who were initially resistant to Zoran Mamdani, who represents very similar politics to someone like myself, are now big fans of him. So they have to like in their minds make up this alternative reality where like, oh no, Hasan is bad, but Zoran is good. Like Hasan is actually an evil villain, but Zoran is actually a really cool guy, and we like him and we love him. For me, I'm happy with that. I'll take that. As long as they're locked in, as long as they're actually still going out and door knocking for someone like Zoran, as long as they are still, as long as they're still engaging in politics in a positive way, I don't give a shit if you hate me, right? It's fine. It's fine. It's good. But you also have to address those inconsistencies in your own mind, because I think the reason why you have to address those inconsistencies in your mind is because it causes you to make the wrong decisions when it comes to politics. You know, I even said that to like, because if you're easily duped, easily tricked about me being like an anti-Semitic terrorist, okay, if in your mind you're like, oh, dude, Hasan is an anti-Semitic terrorist, like he's really up, but then you're like, but I love Zoran, then there is still something worrisome there, because the same lines of attack were launched against them in the same exact way. You know what I mean? And that's like, I worry that the next time a campaign comes around and they're not as like overwhelmingly charismatic like Zoran, who doesn't step on any landmines whatsoever, you are going to find yourself duped by the same exact like malicious forces that present them as bad. And I don't want that. Right? So you have to create some semblance of consistency in your mind. Like you have to have a ideological vision, an ideological project that you are, you're moving in the direction of. Like, this is what I mean. There was this guy, where was it? There was this guy who was like, I responded. I was talking about Zoran Mamdani. He's never done a single anti-Semitic thing. He's gone above and beyond to prove that he will be a mayor for all New Yorkers. At some point, you have to admit this is racist hysteria about a Muslim mayor who has the majority position on Israel, right? He says, Zoran hasn't, but you definitely have. I said, all right, man, as long as you're pro-Zoran, I'll take that W, right? Yeah, Zoran is a good plan, and I've only heard bad things about Cuomo. So yeah, if I could have voted, I would have voted for Zoran, but we'll see how he does and judge him like everyone else. I hope people, I hope people lock in is my point. You don't have to love me. You don't have to like me, but, you know, spend your time wisely, right? Lock in, like recognize that there are far more consequential villains right now. Like, please, for the sake of your loved ones, for the sake of that you care about, for the sake of things that you actually care about, I hope that you can, you know, I hope that you can lock in, like I said, refresh. Candidates who refuse to disown Hasan Piker have a 100% win rate. That's true. I think that a lot of people also don't understand that I often will straight up let bygones be bygones, or even advance the interests of the Democratic Party, even if it's a person that I actually despise, like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I hate them, but I've been writing for them, right, throughout this shutdown, because they are trying to preserve the ACA subsidies. I'm not even a fan of the ACA subsidy structure that exists. I hate it. I think it's an inefficient, bloated system. I want Medicare for all. And the ACA subsidies are a perfect example of why the system is bloated and why the system is completely broken, right? It's just we keep applying Band-Aids over and over and over again. We keep applying Band-Aids over and over again with the hopes that, you know, somewhere along the line, things will be fine, I guess. We'll just keep kicking the can down the road. And I think when Republicans run the... Yeah, and this is basically a conversation that I was having with Ro Khanna at the DNC, specifically about immigrants and how we need to counter message against the Republicans on the lies and combat the lies that the Republicans were engaging in. Another thing that I was absolutely right on. Like, I wish that they would have done that. I wish that they would have actually done that. But in terms of healthcare, like, remember, ACA subsidies is a Band-Aid solution on a gunshot wound, on a gaping wound, right? Your arm is cut off and we're just trying to slam a Band-Aid on there, and the Republicans are trying to rip that Band-Aid off. But in the interim, it's good for that Band-Aid solution to exist, because I don't want 10 million plus Americans to be ripped away from their healthcare coverage because their premiums tripled. Okay? So if the Democrats are actually pushing back and they're fighting and they're using healthcare as a major driving force as to why they're fighting back against the Republicans, then I'm going to be on board with what they're doing. And I will give them that grace. I will give them that charity, in spite of the reality that I disagree with them on many other issues. And this is something that I wish more centrists would do as well. Not that it matters, because I do think that a lot of liberals that are actually within the party infrastructure, a lot of liberals who are actually voters of the Democratic Party, they don't have such rugged approaches. They don't have such hardline, edged approaches to politics in general. But there are a lot of people who just like spend every waking moment doing shit like this, and I think it's like incredibly stupid. It's very narrow-minded. It's very narrow-focused at a time when I guess we all have to lock in a little bit more, right? Like, we got to lock in, folks. That's all I'm saying. We got to lock in. This goes for my audience as well. If you find yourself like getting really angry at like a centrist or something and you want to yell at them, you want to shit on them, think like, is this the best use of my time? I'm not saying don't like gently correct misinformation if you see it out there. That's fine. But like, remember, always try to be as gracious as possible to people who could possibly be aligned with your worldview that you could bring in to your side. You know, that's not what the person said. He's saying that you can criticize foreign policy and simultaneously not say America, and especially New Yorkers themselves, deserve 9/11. But no one ever said that. You are inventing. It has been repeatedly said that the attack was payback and retaliation for U.S. foreign policy. How do you twist that into an attack on individuals? If so, how have you survived since 9/11? This explanation has been given thousands of times in print and in conversation. What is this? I'm trying to lock in, but you got to stop disparaging no-life nerds that never go out. Some of us still have brains and empathy. What do you mean, dude? That's crazy. That's funny. You're ridiculous. This is my major gripe. Guy who self-reports as a no-life nerd who's a shut-in. Like, I'm not yelling at you, man. Don't worry. We need those. I was thinking about this. We need that, because the right wing has the right flank in any race is always going to have moneyed interest backing them. We saw this with Cuomo versus Zoran, right? And what that moneyed interest does is constantly muddy the waters, do everything in its power to basically vilify and ritualistically humiliate the party that is representing some kind of change in the affirmative, some kind of positive change in the left flank direction, in the leftist direction. And this even happens with like centrist Dems versus, you know, far right Republicans, right? Like when they're going into battle, this also takes place. There is a lot of disparaging going on. And if you are especially someone who's coming outside of the party infrastructure that exists, like Zoran Mamdani, there is only one method out there where you can overcome the faucet of unlimited attack ads, and that is grassroots, right? That's just real people power, door knockers, people who are spreading the word in person, because it is incredibly powerful to be able to talk to a human being in the real world and say, this is my guy, and everything you've heard about him is a lie. Trust me on this, right? And I think we could do that. We could do something similar to that on the internet as well. So what I'm trying to say is we do need the shut-ins, you know? We do need the agoraphobes. We do need the people who are extremely online to basically reverse the network of disparaging left flank candidates, but then you know, harness that power against right wing candidates. You know, shut-ins rise up. Shut-ins rise up. That's my point. Like the agoraphobics rise up. Shut-ins rise up, because the reality of the matter is, like, you know, the reason why there is even like a Groyper army in air quotes is because this is an extremely online movement, as I talked about quite a bit. So this is a multi-front war, and it's a multi-front approach. And of course, you can play a role as well. You can play a role in combating the misinformation. You can play a role in actually doing what gets done to someone like myself with people who are like constantly in the chat, sitting around, waiting for the opportune moment to clip me out of context to actually present my worldview as the exact opposite of what it is, right? And the reality of the matter is, the right is such a target-rich environment that you don't even need to clip them out of context. You can clip them in context and people will see it for themselves. The problem is we don't actually place a lot of emphasis on what the they're saying, so they get a lot of bandwidth and a lot of leeway. And their audiences, right-wing audiences and reactionary forces, are much more forgiving in general as well. There's not too much like ideological delineation happening on the right, and they're just like singularly focused on white supremacist ideology for the most part, so they can always just like stay the course. But in order to make sure that you can decouple centrists and you know, people who are self-identified as centrists or self-identified as apolitical from people who present themselves as from content creators who present themselves as centrist or apolitical, when in fact they are actually opening up the floodgates of far-right reactionary neo-Nazi politics, you should be able to do that to them as well. So yes, I am not disparaging the agoraphobics. I am not disparaging the shut-ins. I love my shut-ins, okay? And they play a formative role in this battle. But once again, my question is, like, if you are one of those guys, for example, and you spend every waking moment in this chat trying to find something to clip out of context to like make me seem like I'm right wing or whatever, right? And it's maybe you see some limited success and it makes you feel good. Don't you think that there are more consequential villains out there, more important forces to combat? People who are directly opposed to your worldview, people who are directly opposed to your existence? Go use that energy on them, you know? Go use that energy on them. And at which point you will, people say, no. Okay. All right. I mean, sure. Okay. If you think I'm your biggest villain, when, you know, my agenda is making sure that you get healthcare, my agenda is making sure that we put as many politicians in positions of power that they will actively and genuinely fight to make sure that every single American has healthcare, make sure that every single American has affordable housing, make sure that every single American city and rural town gets the necessary help they deserve, make sure that every single American that is of the working class has better benefits and more autonomy in the workplace. If you think that like that, those are my, you know, fundamental values, those are the things that I'm fighting for. If you think that that presents me as your enemy, unless you're literally a billionaire or a millionaire, you know, a multi-millionaire, like a very powerful corporate entity, and you think that like that worldview that I'm presenting to you is like dangerous and damaging, you have a lot to think about. Because like if you are, you know, if you are actually, you know, Bill Smokes Crackman, if you are actually Michael Bloomberg, if you are actually Larry Ellison, then that's fine. It's understandable that you would see someone like myself as a op, right? But if you're just a regular dude who's working a shitty dead-end job and has no prospects for a better future for themselves, like, and you think that I am your op, I am your number one enemy, you know, you're not locking in. They don't. You get more clicks for them. That's also not true. If we could just like turn the faucet of hyper scrutiny in the direction of like some of these right-wing forces, I think more people would be like, this is gross. Anyway, let's see. This is a prediction. This is a lock I had in 2019.
Trump is worse than Biden. That's 100% true. But a lot of people try to make it seem like a Joe Biden presidency would be significantly better than Donald Trump, when in fact, I want to make the argument that the Obama presidency and the Bill Clinton presidency got us to Donald Trump. And the next time around with a Joe Biden presidency, we're going to have someone worse than Donald Trump. When it comes down to issues that pertain...
This is, again, leading up to the 2020 election. Okay? This is in like 2019. This is at... and turns out it was Trump too, right? Turns out it was Donald Trump too. Much worse. Donald Trump 2 Electric Boogaloo, which is a much worse version of Trump 1 because it's like in some ways more competent, or at least like has in some ways it has the it has the motion and the momentum and cares more about loyalty, right? Rather than bringing competent forces into positions of power that end up spoiling whatever the they wanted to do. They have basically solidified their base, and they've and this is of course pre-January 6, 2021 as well. So like there's less resistance, there's less interest, there's more fatigue, and they have no guardrails whatsoever. No competent individuals within the administration are trying to actively put hurdles to stop Trump from doing the maximalist agenda items that are unimaginably consequential, unimaginably damaging.
To our material conditions, the parties are both unified. Tax cuts for the wealthy. The parties are unified. When it comes to continuously deregulating industries that aren't like directly murdering people by dumping chemicals into their water, the parties are unified. I'm of course talking about Wall Street regulations. When it comes to endless war and bloodshed, the parties are super unified. Could be the new fascist president. Whoever is like smart enough to realize that the time for fascism in America has come. Yes.
Yeah. That's like 2018 or 2019, I assume. Like 2019. And what I'm talking about right there is the consensus in DC. There's consensus politics on DC. Healthcare must remain private. There's consensus on this, right? Deregulatory mechanisms and a lack of interest from the left flank party against the endless amount of deregulation from the Republicans, there's consensus on. Endless war and endless militarism around the world, there is consensus on, right? And as long as there's consensus on these issues of consequence, most people can't distinguish between either party. And I always say, like, the Democrats need to make a case in the affirmative. Here's another moment where this is from 7 months ago, but full stack 11:30. Let's see. This was, I believe, is this the after the election analysis or before the election analysis of the podcast?
The outcome of this election.
He then goes into one of the main reasons why the Democrats lost this election, and that is capitulating to right-wing framing.
Despite people like myself and many others saying, like, don't do this, you're going to hemorrhage the base, you're going to hemorrhage the base of support, you are going to cut away at your turnout, you're going to cut across many different constituencies that you rely on to create an effective coalition, and it's a very dangerous gamble to assume that you can decouple a lot of these people in the suburbs, a lot of like white women specifically, away from the Republican Party and vote for you instead. I know that they're high propensity voters, but it doesn't matter. There's still plenty of low propensity voters that you have to rely on to win.
The problem is not that if only Kamala went on more cool and edgy podcasts that she would have won. This was not an issue of culture. This was an issue of material needs. The problem is the Dem base was seeing Kamala and the party tacked to the right on a litany of issues, which will definitely be getting into soon enough. But for now, let's talk about the Harris campaign's focus on Kamala, the person, to see how this came to be.
And they saw in the vice president someone they didn't know a lot about a background. So, who she was, what she stood for, what she did as vice president. So in every step of what we were trying to do, we had to tell a pretty robust story. We really focused from the get-go on how she was different than everyone else, different than Joe Biden, different than Donald Trump.
So we did talk about things like she's a different generation. Most of her career is from outside of Washington, not inside Washington. Her career has been about reaching across the aisle. All of these things, we were trying to tell a story and give the impression that she was different.
And people might say, oh, why do you keep harping on this? Like when it's obvious that like Donald Trump is devastating, right? The reason why I'm doing it is not to be like, oh, I was right. The reason why I'm doing this is because we cannot repeat this mistake ever again, okay? That's the reason why I've been committed to the messaging discipline, going to every single liberal or even right-wing outlet that I can to keep repeating these points over and over again, to talk about like my predictions of how damaging a Trump presidency was going to look like, which is unfolding, okay? And also simultaneously talk about like what the Democrats could do to fix their branding issue. You won't. Trump will be your king till 2040, lol. I mean, this is the type of stuff that I'm actually confused by, because like if you say stuff like that, like don't you realize that's just bad for the whole world? And it's certainly bad if you're in America. It's bad for you too. I'm not gonna ban this person, but like saying that, especially today, one day after the Trump administration went to, I'm memeing, dude. Okay, well, some people aren't memeing. Some people do come in and they go, oh, Trump is your God king, bitch. Keep crying, loser. And it's like, I guess that chatter was like trolling, but some people do legitimately think that is like reason enough to be an advocate for Donald Trump. And I'm always confused by that, because it's like, well, brother, you're cooked. I mean, you're looking at an unprecedented affordability crisis where the administration has basically admitted that there is recession happening in key sectors in this country. And also on top of that, the Trump administration, after a record-breaking lengthy shutdown, has decided to continue the shutdown rather than actually concede to the very reasonable demands that the Democrats are making, and also have made things worse by starving 42 million Americans by force, even though the lower courts actually dictated that the additional $6 billion in SNAP subsidies that are already out there, like the contingency fund that's out there, cannot be used to, in the interim, fund the SNAP programs that 42 million Americans rely on to feed their children. 16 million children rely on SNAP, right? And the administration went to the Supreme Court and openly said, no, that we do not want you to fund this. And they're running around. They are running around currently celebrating that. How do I explain to a coworker who thinks that this isn't anything special and that he's fine? Like, how do you shortly say all of this? I mean, just ask him, like, one of the aspects that has been very damaging to the way that people reflect on the Trump administration has actually been the ballroom shit. I can't believe it, but it does feel like the electorate broadly got annoyed with the ballroom. Like that was a unique moment of discontent. Another one was the Zelensky thing. Like it just blows my mind that the stuff that people actually care about is the unpresidential qualities of this president and not the actual impact and not the actual devastation. It is kind of crazy how image obsessed most people are still, where they see people starving and that doesn't piss them off on its own, but they see people starving. They see the Trump administration refusing to release the Epstein files. That was another moment that put a little bit of a dent, right? But the straw that broke the camel's back, it seems, is the fact that this is building a ballroom. And I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it, but it does kind of feel like I've been looking at these polls and I'm thinking maybe it's coming from, what is this? Mamdani faces criticism from liberal media. What is the liberal media criticism that Mamdani is facing? I've seen so many TikToks of people from inside Walmart and celebrating how empty it is and how stocked the shelves are. Genuinely freak shit. More right-leaning liberal friends said I'm down with the revolution after the Trump-Zelensky ordeal because his dad is Ukrainian. Yeah. It is a let them eat cake moment, I guess. And it's the juxtaposition. I think it might be the juxtaposition of like, it might be the buildup of all of the other things that he's up finally coming to a boiling point. Or it might be the juxtaposition of like the administration doing this thing, like the multi-millionaire defense contractor backed like ballroom building initiative. Or it might be the aesthetics of destroying the White House. And I don't know, maybe it's all of the above, but you know, one of the stickiest aspects for Trump's disapproval, has been the ballroom. It blows my mind. I guess we're all very visual learners, you know? We're very aesthetically driven still to this day. I think people are just dumb and the ballroom puts it in the black and white for a lot of normies. Sure. The issue I worry about is that this dialectical moment the admin is inducing won't push people towards anything progressive, but deeper into the reactionary bigotry and hatred. Yeah, but we can't. We have an opportunity to make a dent in the collective consciousness here. That's what I mean. As contradictions worsen, people can move in either direction. As contradictions worsen, people can move in the reactionary direction, and as many do, because the Republicans never stop advancing their reactionary agenda, and they never stop trying to make messages stick. They never stop trying to divide the working class, and they do so successfully. But we have an alternative vision here, right? We have an alternative vision here. We can show them these contradictions. We can show the people these contradictions and say, hey, look, there is a different alternative out there. There is a different way out of this, okay? If you are on the left, you are outside of the duopoly framework. It's just the reality. Unfortunately, we have two major parties that are, both capitalist, right? But at least one allows an opening for anti-capitalist candidates to run. So I always say, you got to exhaust all options and also simultaneously continue applying pressure to the one party that has a base that is more malleable and is a base that is more open-minded and a base that might actually find themselves to be closer to your worldview, closer to an anti-capitalist vision than they previously thought they were. That's where we're at.